Well, well, well. So this is not the best title to have, but City of Chicago has just been named, and I didn't even know they were naming this every year for the 13th year in a row, the murder capital of the United States. And that's just crazy that Chicago has gotten this unfortunate title 13 straight times. I never knew they were even naming this for the city. And I'm from Chicago, born and raised. And I done heard about the high crime in Chicago, over the years past and everything. And I'm going to play the video in a little bit. You all can see the screen right there with the years, last year, this year, and the change, the percentages, what's down, and then what's up. You got theft up by 5%, sexual assault up by 7%, and then murder is down 10%. Well, that's the change from 2024 to 2025. You all can see what's up and what's down. And this is reporting from the Chicago Police Department. And so, are the police not doing it enough? Is it their fault? Is it the neighborhood's fault? Is it a combination of Chicago police and Chicago neighborhoods? Do people not like the police in general? Are people going with the whole no snitching, and so they're not giving Chicago Police Department enough details? It could be a lot of factors. I know me and my mother was speaking, and she talked about last month in March, there's a guy who lives in Hyde Park, which is south. I still consider it south side of Chicago, Hyde Park neighborhood in Chicago. And he had just closed the deal on some property. So I guess he's into real estate, my mother said. And he had his Lamborghini that he bought parked in Hyde Park. Black man, 47 years old, my mother said. Two people, I don't know their race. My mom didn't tell me. Ran up on this guy where he lived and shot him 2 times in the head. So, unfortunately, that brother, he didn't make it. He passed away. And my mother was saying, she was blaming it on the car, saying, why would you need to be that flashy living in Hyde Park? She's saying, based on, what he had, his material possessions, that made him a target. And what you have can make you a target, even though I wouldn't tell anybody not to get what they want just because now you got a bullseye on your back. But, the Lamborghini is, it's an exotic vehicle. It costs a lot of money. And I don't know what else that 47-year-old black man may have been involved in. But they definitely, had their eye on him and they took him out. And so that's just, one story of crime in Chicago. But I know it's been many over the years. And do you all think this is a fair title? I'm asking for Chicago in particular to check in, whether you still live there or not. What do you think? Because this is the 13th year in a row that Chicago has been given this title, and that's ridiculous. Anton Daniels, he lives in Detroit, Michigan. He's another content creator. He covered this story. He's blaming it on black culture. So is it fair to blame this title on black people in Chicago? Now, I do know every crime story that I've heard in Chicago hasn't been done by a black person. But is Anton right in blaming our people, I'm black, for getting this title? Are black people to blame? I don't know. I don't want to put it all just on one race. But yeah, this is definitely a shame. I'm going to play the video now so you all can get a breakdown of it from the Fox News channel. So year number 13, back to back to back, Chicago is the murder capital of the United States. Fair use, YouTube, fair use.
DJ, turn me up real strong. Play me back my favorite song. Go. Do you wanna party? Do you wanna dance?
Waiting for the commercial to play. Let's skip it.
Is named America's murder capital for the 13th consecutive year. And Democrat leaders are now being called out for demonizing police and touting a declining crime rate despite the concerns of residents from all across that city. Let's bring in Raymond Lopez, Democratic Chicago alderman. Your city, unfortunately, is the murder capital. Raymond, why?
You know, well, the reason is simple, John. We have a political elite that is in love with criminality, that encourages criminal behavior, pushes down our police officers, demonizes their work on a daily basis, and elevates the perpetrators of crime as the victims of society themselves. And that kind of coddling has brought us to where we are today for the 13th year in a row. Right now, the disregard for human life is so high in the city of Chicago that you can literally have a group of 100 teens enjoying a warm day and almost expect at least 2 or 3 to be shot. And we in fact saw that just 2 days ago where a 15-year-old was shot in a crowd walking down the Magnificent Mile. And many of our politicians, like Brandon Johnson and others, continue to make excuses, continue to rationalize this behavior as opposed to hold them and their parents accountable for what's going on.
There was a congressional hearing earlier this month at which Mayor Brandon Johnson appeared, and Congressman Darren LaHood got into a bit of a sparring match with him. I want to play this for our viewers.
Last year, Chicago had 573 murders.
Down.
Okay, but I want to compare that to the city of New York that is almost 2/3 the size of Chicago, 337 murders. So you had 573 murders in the city of Chicago, and you're 1/3 the size.
That's the lowest amount in 5 years under my leadership.
Okay, and you look at the level of violent criminals, sexual offenses, and drug dealers.
All violent crime is down in Chicago.
When I hear your answer, no one in this room should be surprised that your approval rating is 6.6%.
The mayor seems satisfied with the way things are going. What do you say?
Well, I think acknowledging the 6.6% approval rating was probably the only truthful thing that happened at that hearing, because even in that instance, the mayor was deflecting. He was lying, because the reason that the numbers are down in his estimation is because they've been able to use jurisdictional overlap to try and negate even more numbers being added to our totals. If it happened on an expressway or a county road, then they don't count in the city of Chicago, even if it happened within our borders. But what I do know is this, is that people aren't calling 911 anymore. People are afraid. Police are unable to do their job because of cancellation of gunshot detection technology and other things. We know that the perception of the violence in the city of Chicago is real, because the violence in the city of Chicago is real. And the mayor can try to do that performance as much as he wants, but the people know better, and they can feel it, especially on the south and west sides and predominantly African-American communities, where you have entrepreneurs trying to pursue the American dream and are being vandalized, shoplifted, and destroyed simply because of the location, because the mayor refuses to call out communities for the behavior that's going on in them.
I want to put up a graphic that shows the year-to-date crime statistics for your city. Now, these are according to the Chicago Police Department. These might be some of the numbers that the mayor was referring to. Murders down 10%, robbery down 34%, battery down 15%, carjacking down 31%. Total crimes, according to the police department, down 17%. Are they fudging those numbers?
They're absolutely fudging those numbers, because they're reclassifying and subdividing them into various different ways to avoid them being included in the total number of each of those various crime categories. For example, there are 5 different ways to refer to carjacking, of which 4 out of those 5 will be reported as the main crime statistic, where everything else will be downplayed as something else or re-referred as something else. But we know that that semantical argument does not reflect the truth of what's going on in the city of Chicago. Crime is not down here, and the lack of reporting of crime is up. When you look at the robberies, the battery, the assaults, people are simply not calling 911 anymore. And if that is what you're putting your victory lap on, that people refuse to call 911, then you are doing a very poor job as mayor and truly don't understand the fact that crime has not changed, just people's accommodating it has.
Raymond Lopez, we appreciate you coming on today. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And so there you all have it. So it's mainly occurring a lot on the south and west sides. I think it's happening all over the city. I've heard of different break-ins on the north side of the city, but that alderman feels the numbers are not real that's being reported by the Chicago Police Department. Maybe he, like you said, crimes are not being, every single one is not being reported because people are scared. And if these numbers are being manipulated by Chicago Police Department and I guess Mayor Brandon Johnson, we don't have any evidence of that. That's just how that Alderman Raymond Lopez feels. What reasons would they have to fudge the numbers, as he said? Is it they're trying to get some funding for something so it makes the city look better? I don't know. But it's crazy, and I don't even know who makes these claims, gives these titles, should I say, about the murder capital of the United States. This is the 13th year in a row. I wonder who had it before Chicago, you know, 13, 14 years ago. But, it's crazy. And you all saw the video and you saw some of the footage of the actual crimes from the dates that they got going from late last year into this year. What they caught on those cameras in those establishments, and things being broken into. So it's definitely a shame. I don't know where all of the blame goes to. You can't just put it on, I think, one particular race of people or things like that. But it's definitely not a title that a city wants to carry, for the 13th straight year in a row. I don't even know if a lot of people in Chicago know that it's been named that for the third this many times. People are kind of indifferent towards it. They hear about the crime. You see it on the news. Some people, just continue on with their daily lives and just try and stay safe. So I don't think people feel any type of way, even if they finding out that if you live in Chicago, you've been named the murder capital of the world. It's just, I don't know how much that resonates with people. I know I've heard a lot of Chicago's population decreasing, with a lot of them going to Houston, Texas as a place in particular because of the crime and it becoming more expensive to live in Chicago. So those two things, increase in cost of living and crime, has made Chicago population, sink. And I know in 2024, if enough people continue to leave, then it'll be the fourth biggest city in the United States. It's the third right now. And Houston would become the third biggest. And then LA number two still, and New York City number one still. So, but you all saw Mayor Johnson, and he seems, he was going back and forth saying that the numbers are down during his leadership, during his watch. So I don't know, what do you all think? Are they down? What do you feel? So it's so many different factors and where to place the blame. If the neighborhoods have to improve, the families, to where all of this starts in the home, as to why you even have people out here wanting to commit crimes. What's the reasoning? Are they in a state of poverty where they just don't have it? They're a have not, and so they go out here and they try and get away with it. And also in the process, you also have lives being lost. So obviously something has to give, and the people who don't want any part of it, they've made their decision to leave Chicago, and some to leave Illinois altogether. So definitely something that needs to be addressed. And I guess the question is, where do we go from here? And this article, it just shows more of what the video just says in a written out format if you all want to go through it. It's on foxnews.com. I just heard about it. And, here's a story he was talking about most recently. on the Magnificent Mile 2 days ago. 15-year-old was shot in the crowd. And then he says, this is coming from the Alderman Lopez, and he's accusing Mayor Johnson and other Chicago politicians of making excuses and seem to rationalize this behavior, and they're not holding the parents accountable for what's going on. I don't know exactly how you hold the parents accountable, what would be the best way. I don't know if you put them in a temporary lockup, if you want to find them, what's going on with the parenting skills. It's so many things. So it's tough. And then, puts the police department in a tough spot as well, in terms of if they can't work with the neighborhood to keep the crime down, because I think it takes both the neighborhood residents and the police department. So I know Chicago in general has, it's definitely room for improvement on a lot of things, not just the crime, but yeah, a lot of work has to be done. I don't know if Mayor Johnson will be the mayor the next term. People I've spoken to say he's a one and done mayor. He won't get a second term. So we'll see once that election comes up. But yeah, that's where we're at with it, with Chicago. And like I said, if you live here or you've moved away within the last 15 years, what do you all think? Is it the murder capital of the United States? Let me know down in the comments. And what do you think can be done, if anything, to get this title off of Chicago? You really don't want it on any city, but I guess they name it regardless of what would be the murder capital. Or maybe you have to meet a certain level of crime, and so hopefully we get to a point where no city in the United States is being named that. But for right now, with Chicago, Illinois, I'm asking Chicago to check in. Let me know down in the comments, is this title still a fit for Chicago for the 13th time in a row, back to back to back? It's repeating. Or do you all think they're laying it on too thick and that Chicago is not the murder capital? I'm open to all sides of the argument. And, put that down in the comments. And if you've actually witnessed a crime living in Chicago, put that down in the comments too. So if you can speak from personal experience where you feel this title applies, or if you've been living in Chicago and haven't really went through anything and you feel like that is not as bad as they're saying it is. Obviously, it's a problem, but, maybe you're coming from a different perspective. So, unfortunately, this is where it's at for the city of Chicago. And, like, share, and subscribe. As always, facts or feelings. They putting some facts in here. The alderman says the numbers aren't the real numbers. And so it's up to you to decide, if the numbers are being fudged or not. But subscribe to the channel as facts or feelings, no spaces, all one word. Put that in the YouTube search and my channel comes right up. And again, anybody can respond, but in particular, Chicago residents and former Chicago area residents, chime in the comments and let me know what you all think about this murder capital charge. I'm out.